The laughter started before the stable boy even touched the horse. Not quiet laughter. Not polite amusement. But sharp, cutting laughter from men who had never spent a night in a stable, yet believed they understood everything about animals. And standing in the center of it all was a skinny teenage stable boy, holding a broken saddle and staring at a horse everyone called worthless. But what none of them knew was that this stubborn horse had already survived things they never could. And that broken saddle? It was about to change two lives forever. The morning sun rose over Blackridge Estate, painting the massive manor in gold. Luxury cars lined the gravel driveway. Men in tailored suits stood around sipping coffee, discussing deals worth more money than the entire stable would ever see in a lifetime. Inside the horse yard, however, it was a different world. Straw, sweat, and silence. Ethan worked there every day. 17 years old. No family left. No inheritance. Just a job cleaning stalls for wealthy men who barely remembered his name. He moved quietly through the barns, doing the work no one else wanted. Mucking stalls. Feeding horses. Fixing broken tack. And never complaining. That morning, something unusual happened. A black luxury SUV pulled into the yard. And out stepped Victor Hale. The wealthiest man in the region. Owner of Blackridge Estate. A man known for two things. Money. And cruelty disguised as humor. The entire stable staff stopped working. Even the horses seemed to feel it. Victor walked through the barn like he owned the air itself. And in a way, he did. He stopped in front of Ethan. Boy. Ethan looked up quickly. Yes, sir? Victor smiled. Not warmly. Today you're getting a promotion. The other workers chuckled. Ethan frowned. A promotion, sir? Victor nodded toward the far stall. Congratulations. You get him. The stable gate creaked open. And inside stood a horse unlike any other. Muscular. Dark brown with scars across his flank. But it wasn't his size that made everyone uneasy. It was his eyes. Cold. Defiant. Untrusting. A horse that had broken trainers before he was even fully grown. One of the workers whispered, "That's the one nobody can ride." Another laughed. "He throws anyone who gets near him." Victor turned slightly. Let's see if the boy is special. Ethan stepped forward slowly. Every instinct told him to stop. But something about the horse held him in place. The horse didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched. Waiting. Victor signaled. A worker dropped a worn, broken saddle onto the ground. Dust rose as it hit. Leather cracked. Stirrups mismatched. It looked unusable. A joke. This, Victor said, is your equipment. Laughter erupted again. Even some of the stable workers looked away in embarrassment for Ethan. But Ethan didn't laugh. He stared at the saddle. Then at the horse. Something didn't feel right. This horse, Victor continued, is stubborn beyond repair. He refuses riders. He refuses training. So we figured. A smirk formed. He deserves a stable boy who refuses to quit. The words were meant to humiliate, and they did. But not in the way Victor expected. Because Ethan didn't feel anger. He felt something else. Recognition. The horse shifted slightly. A single step forward. The ground vibrated under its weight. Ethan didn't move back. Instead, he slowly placed a hand on the saddle. Then looked at the horse again. I guess it's just you and me, he whispered. The horse exhaled sharply. Not aggression. Not fear. Something closer to exhaustion. Like it had been waiting a long time for someone not afraid of it. Victor chuckled. Let's see how long you last. He turned toward the exit. And try not to die, boy. It would ruin the joke. The men followed him, still laughing. The stable slowly emptied. Ethan was left alone. With a stubborn horse. And a broken saddle. In a world that expected him to fail. He stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully. The horse didn't move. Didn't attack. Just watched. Breathing heavy. Ethan placed the saddle on a wooden stand. Then looked up. I don't know what they did to you, he said quietly. But I'm not them. A long silence followed. The wind brushed through the barn. Dust drifted in the sunlight. And for the first time, the horse blinked. Slowly, almost uncertain. Then it turned its head away. Not rejection. Not acceptance. Something in between. A warning. And a beginning. Ethan picked up a brush. And gently reached forward. The horse tensed. Every muscle tightening. Ready to strike. But Ethan didn't stop. He simply waited. And lowered his voice. "I've got nowhere else to be." The horse didn't move. Neither did Ethan. And in that stillness, something invisible began to shift. 'Cause sometimes, the most dangerous horses aren't the wildest ones. They're the ones who once trusted someone and learned not to. And Ethan was about to find out exactly what broke him. The barn stayed silent long after the laughter faded. But silence didn't mean peace. It meant pressure. The kind that sat heavy in the air, like a storm refusing to break. Ethan could still hear Victor's voice in his head. "Let's see how long you last." He looked at the horse again. And for the first time, he understood what that challenge really was. It wasn't about riding. It was about surviving the horse's past. The stallion stood unmoving in the center of the stall. Breathing steady. Eyes locked on Ethan. But there was something deeper in that gaze now. Not curiosity. Not calm. Memory. Ethan slowly stepped closer, the broken saddle still resting on the wooden stand beside him. Every movement he made was measured. Careful. Like approaching something that could shatter without warning. The horse suddenly stomped once. The sound cracked through the barn like a gunshot. Ethan stopped instantly. Not fearfully. Respectfully. "Okay," he whispered. "I understand." The horse shifted its weight. A warning posture. Shoulders tight. Neck arched slightly. A body ready to defend itself against anything it couldn't predict. Ethan didn't move. Instead, he sat down on the hay just outside the stall gate. No ropes. No tools. No pressure. Just presence. Minutes passed. Then more. The horse didn't relax. But it also didn't attack. It simply watched him like a puzzle it couldn't solve. From outside the barn, one of the older stable workers peeked in. He muttered, "That boy's wasting his time." Another replied, "Or getting himself killed." But Ethan didn't hear them. Or maybe he chose not to. Because something inside him was paying attention to something else. A pattern. Every time Ethan shifted slightly, the horse reacted. Every time Ethan stayed still, the horse studied him. Not aggressively. Calculating. Like it had been trained to expect betrayal from movement. And that realization hit Ethan hard. This wasn't a wild horse. This was a broken one. He stood slowly. The horse tensed again. Ethan immediately froze. "I'm not leaving," he said softly. "But I'm not coming closer either." A strange silence followed. The horse blinked. Then twice. The tension didn't disappear. But it changed shape. Ethan reached for the broken saddle again. This time, he didn't approach the horse. He simply held it up, letting the horse see it. Then he placed it back down. "I don't think you like this thing," he said quietly. The horse snorted sharply. Almost like an answer. Ethan frowned slightly. "Did they use it to hurt you?" The barn seemed to get colder. The horse didn't respond. But it didn't need to. That small hesitation. That microsecond of tension. It said everything. Ethan's expression changed. Something inside him hardened. Not anger at the horse, but at the unknown history behind it. "Okay," he said again. "This changes things." He slowly stepped out of the stall area and grabbed a bucket of water. When he returned, he placed it just outside the stall. Then stepped back again. No pressure. No expectation. The horse watched the bucket. Didn't move. Minutes passed. Then finally, one cautious step forward. The sound of the hoof hitting would echoed louder than anything else in the barn. Ethan didn't move. The horse leaned down. Sniffed the water. Then drank. Quickly. Like it hadn't trusted water in a long time either. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Good." Just one word. Nothing more. The horse lifted its head again. Water dripping from its muzzle. And for the first time, it didn't look like it was planning its next defense. But the peace didn't last long. Because outside the barn, footsteps returned. Slow. Confident. Arrogant. Victor Hale reappeared at the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching the scene. "Well," he said. "Still alive." Ethan didn't turn immediately. He kept his eyes on the horse. "I'm working." Victor chuckled. "Working?" He stepped inside. That animal hasn't let anyone get near him in months. The horse immediately stiffened again. The change was instant. Like a switch had been flipped. Victor noticed. "There it is." Ethan stood slowly. "Don't." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Don't what?" "Don't talk like he's a weapon." Victor laughed. "He is." The word hung in the air. "Heavy." Chirp. The horse took a step back. Not from Ethan. From Victor. Ethan noticed immediately. "You did something to him." Victor shrugged. "Everyone here tried to train him. No one succeeded. So we stopped trying. And started using him." That sentence changed everything. The horse's breathing grew heavier. Its eyes narrowed. Old memory resurfacing. Pain without words. Ethan's fists clenched slightly. But his voice stayed calm. "That's why he doesn't trust anyone." Victor smiled. "Then he's your problem now." He turned to leave. "Oh, and don't get attached. He's not worth it." When the footsteps faded again, the barn felt different. Not quieter. Heavier. Ethan looked at the horse. The horse looked at him. And for the first time, there was no confusion in either of them. Only shared understanding. "You didn't choose this life," Ethan said softly. The horse didn't move. "But neither did I." A long silence followed. Then Ethan slowly reached toward the broken saddle again. Not to use it. Not to fix it. But to understand it. The horse tensed. Then stopped. Watching. Waiting. Not attacking. Not running. Just allowing. And that was the first real step. Not trust. Not yet. But something close enough to begin healing. And somewhere deep inside the barn, something long broken, finally started to shift. The next morning, the barn felt different. Not calmer. Not safer. Just uncertain. Like something had been disturbed the night before and hadn't settled back into place. Ethan felt it the moment he walked in. The horse was already awake. Waiting. Watching. The broken saddle still sat on the wooden stand. Ethan had spent half the night looking at it. Not repairing it. Just studying it. Every scratch. Every tear. Every sign that it had once been used too harshly. Now, in the daylight, he finally understood something important. This wasn't just a broken saddle. It was part of the horse's fear. He stepped toward the stall slowly. The horse didn't react immediately. That alone was new. Before, it would have tensed at the slightest movement. Now, it only watched. Carefully. Like it was deciding whether Ethan still deserved access to its space. Ethan stopped at the gate. "I'm going to try something," he said quietly. The horse snorted. Not aggressive, but skeptical. Ethan picked up the saddle. Held it up. Then paused. "If this is wrong, you can tell me." He didn't expect a response. But the horse shifted its weight. One step back. Not panic. Just warning. Ethan nodded. "Got it." He placed the saddle on the horse's back. Slowly. Carefully. No sudden movements. No force. The horse froze. Every muscle locked. The barn itself felt like it had stopped breathing. Ethan held his hands away. "I'm not here to fight you." The horse didn't move. Seconds stretched. Then minutes. And then something strange happened. The horse didn't buck. Didn't rear. Didn't explode in anger. It simply trembled. A deep, controlled shake of tension. Like it was remembering something it wanted to forget. Ethan stepped back immediately. "Okay, I see it." He removed the saddle instantly. The horse exhaled sharply. Almost like relief. Ethan nodded slowly. "That's not just discomfort. That's memory." Outside the barn, voices gathered again. Workers had started watching. Whispering. Laughing quietly. "He's trying to ride it? He'll be thrown in seconds. Victor's going to lose it when he sees this." Ethan ignored them. He wasn't trying to prove anything. Not to them. Not to Victor. Only to the horse. He leaned on the fence of the stall. "I'm not going to force you," he said softly. I don't care what they think. The horse stared at him. Unmoving. Then slowly. It took one step forward. Not toward the saddle. Toward Ethan. The stable workers went silent. Even they understood what that meant. Ethan didn't move. Didn't speak. He just stayed still, letting the horse choose the distance. Another step. Then another. Until the horse stood just a few feet away from him. Close enough that Ethan could see the scars more clearly now. Not just on its body, but in its posture. You were trained to expect pain, Ethan whispered. The horse blinked. Slowly. And now you expect it from everyone. A long silence followed. Then the horse lowered its head slightly. Not submission. Not surrender. Something more fragile. Trust beginning to consider existence. Ethan reached into his pocket. Pulled out a small piece of apple from lunch. He held it out. No sudden movement. Just patience. The horse sniffed the air. Hesitated. Then stepped forward and took it. Quickly. Like it didn't want to regret the decision. Ethan let out a slow breath. That's a start. That afternoon, Victor arrived earlier than usual. He walked straight into the barn. No greeting. No smile. Just observation. What are you doing? He asked immediately. Ethan didn't look up. Building trust. Victor scoffed. With that thing. The horse immediately reacted to Victor's voice. Its body tightened instantly. Eyes sharpened. Old fear resurfacing. Victor noticed. Smirked. See? Still useless. Ethan stepped between them slightly. Don't talk to him like that. Victor raised an eyebrow. You're defending it now? Ethan nodded once. Yes. The barn went silent. Even the workers outside stopped talking. Victor studied him. Then laughed lightly. You're getting attached to a joke. Ethan's voice stayed steady. He's not a joke. The horse shifted closer behind Ethan. Not hiding. Positioning. Victor noticed that too. His expression changed slightly. Curiosity replacing amusement. Well, Victor said slowly, let's see how far your trust experiment goes. He turned toward the exit. But don't forget, if it breaks you. I warned you. When he left, the barn felt lighter. But not safe. Just momentarily free. Ethan turned back to the horse. The horse was still watching the door. Then slowly looked back at him. For the first time, there was something new in its eyes. Not fear. Not resistance. Not confusion. But recognition. Like it was beginning to understand. Not all humans were the same. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, he whispered. I think we're getting somewhere. And deep in that quiet barn, a stubborn horse and a forgotten boy took their first real step toward becoming something neither of them expected. The team. The barn was quiet that morning in a way it hadn't been for years. Not peaceful quiet. Tense quiet. The kind that makes every sound feel louder than it should be. Even the horses in the neighboring stalls seemed unsettled, shifting and snorting as if they could feel something was coming. Ethan felt it too. Because today, he wasn't just going to feed the horse. He was going to try something no one else dared attempt. The broken saddle sat on the fence rail outside the stall. Ethan had cleaned it again. Stitched what he could. Reinforced the weak leather with whatever scraps he had found in the tack room. It still looked old. Still looked fragile. But it was no longer completely broken. Just like them. Inside the stall, the horse watched him closely. No longer aggressive. But not relaxed either. It had learned Ethan wasn't like the others. But it hadn't yet learned what he would do next. Ethan exhaled slowly. This might not work, he said softly. The horse blinked. He stepped closer. Placed the saddle on the horse's back. This time, the horse didn't panic. It tensed. But it stayed still. Ethan tightened the straps slowly. One at a time. Carefully watching for any sign of resistance. The horse shifted once. Then stopped. That's it, Ethan whispered. You're okay. The moment the saddle was secure, the entire barn felt like it stopped breathing again. Stable workers had gathered outside the doors. Even Victor Hale had arrived early. Standing with his arms crossed. Waiting for failure. He's actually going through with it, one worker muttered. Victor smirked. This should be entertaining. Ethan didn't look at them. He only looked at the horse. And the horse only looked at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. No movement. No reaction. Just silence stretched tight like a wire about to snap. Then Ethan slowly placed one foot in the stirrup. The horse's muscles tightened instantly. A warning ripple across its body. But Ethan didn't stop. He lifted himself up, settling carefully into the saddle. The horse flinched. Not violently, but deeply, like something inside it had just remembered pain. Ethan immediately loosened his grip. "I'm here," he said gently. "I'm not hurting you." The horse stood frozen, every instinct screaming, every memory pressing forward. Outside, Victor leaned forward slightly. "This is where it ends," he whispered. But it didn't end. Because the horse didn't move. It didn't throw him. It didn't bolt. It simply endured. Ethan sat still for a few seconds, letting his weight settle, letting silence stretch again. Then softly said, "Walk." The horse didn't respond. Ethan tried again. Just one step. The pause. The horse moved. One step forward. Slow. Controlled. Careful. The barn erupted in shocked whispers outside. Victor's smirk faded slightly. Just slightly. Another step. Then another. Ethan kept his hands loose on the reins. Not controlling. Guiding only if needed. But mostly trusting. The horse walked out of the stall. Into open space. Sunlight hit its coat. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a prisoner. It felt like a decision. They crossed the yard slowly. Every worker watching in disbelief. Some shaking their heads. Some stepping back. None speaking. Victor's expression darkened. "This is impossible." Ethan heard him but didn't respond. He was too focused on the rhythm beneath him. The horse's breathing. Its hesitation. Its growing awareness that not all movement meant danger. At the edge of the training field, Ethan gently pulled the reins. "Stop." The horse stopped instantly. A moment of silence. Then Ethan slowly leaned forward. "I told you," he whispered. "You're not broken." The horse exhaled deeply. A long breath. As if releasing something it had carried for years. Then something unexpected happened. It lowered its head slightly. Not surrender. Not exhaustion. From the fence line, one of the stable workers whispered, "It's listening to him." Victor clenched his jaw. That changes nothing. But it did. Because Ethan was no longer just sitting on a horse. He was connecting with it. He gently guided it forward again. The horse obeyed. Not perfectly. Not instantly. But willingly. Step by step. Across the field. Under the sky. Away from the fear of the barn. And for the first time, the horse didn't feel like a weapon. Or a joke. Or a failure. It felt like something else entirely. Something it had forgotten was possible. Ethan slowed it to a stop again. Then softly patted its neck. "Good." The horse closed its eyes for a moment. And in that quiet pause, something inside it finally began to settle. Not healed. Not finished. But no longer alone in its pain. Victor turned away sharply. "This is temporary," he muttered. But even he didn't sound certain anymore. Because deep down, everyone had seen it. Something had changed. Not just in the horse, but in both of them. And change like that could not be undone easily. Ethan looked out across the field. The horse stood steady beneath him. Not resisting. Not escaping. Just present. For the first time since he arrived at Blackridge Estate, Ethan didn't feel like a stable boy. He felt like someone being trusted with something fragile. Something powerful. Something worth protecting. And neither of them realized it yet. But this was only the beginning of what the horse had truly been waiting for. The morning after the first ride felt different. Not because anything had changed outside, but because something had changed inside the barn. Even the air seemed lighter, as if the walls themselves had stopped expecting failure. Ethan noticed it the moment he walked in. The horse was already standing near the gate. Waiting. Not tense. Not hostile. Just present. The broken saddle still hung on the fence, but now it no longer looked like a punishment. It looked like a tool. Something that had finally found its purpose. Ethan stepped closer slowly. The horse didn't step back. Didn't brace itself. Just watched him. Come. Steady. You're still here, Ethan said quietly. The horse exhaled softly in response. Outside the barn, Victor Hale stood with several staff members. But something about him had changed too. The confidence was still there, but now it was mixed with irritation. And something close to disbelief. This is not what I expected, Victor muttered. One worker replied nervously, Sir, no one has ever ridden him twice. Victor didn't respond. He was watching Ethan. Watching the horse. Trying to understand what he couldn't control. Inside the stall, Ethan adjusted the saddle straps again.